Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game, the podcast where I, your host, Connor McCabe, bring on a guest to hear from them about a meaningful or memorable video game from a particular moment in their life. On the show, we talk to our guests as much about what made playing that game special and memorable and fun and all sorts of other adjectives, as we will get into the time and place when they had this special time with it. A little bit of housekeeping up top for the show is that anything that my guest or I plug today on the podcast, wherever you're listening, whether it's watching on YouTube or listening in your favorite podcast catcher, if you scroll down, there's a nice, neat, organized show notes that I've made after the clever copy I've written for this episode where you can click a link. So whether you want to follow someone on social media or listen to another podcast or even check us out on Patreon where we have bonus podcasts, there's links in the show notes below, so feel free to scroll down and find that. Without further ado, I'll finally introduce our guest for today's episode, so please welcome to the podcast, game producer John Giarratana.
Howdy. Do you write unique copy for every single episode?
I'll usually write like 2 sentences or so.
Okay,
Yeah,
I love how you put it as copy. It's so official.
Oh, I'm doing that just so that in the event that I could ever get a copywriting job someday, that it's like, oh, see, I'm putting it into practice.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And I was just going to say, you gave me, now that you've opened this up to me, I'll for the listener at home, because I know they're going to want to peek behind the curtain here. Just they're dying for it. I try to write like a clever or like fun first sentence that sort of like ties it in, that can almost act like essentially like a social media headline, not necessarily like YouTube grabby, where it's like, you won't believe what John said on this episode. More so for this one, here's a prediction. It's probably going to be something along the lines of, grab your superstar and let's fly off into this episode. Something
nice.
Like that.
Real copy. Yeah, that's copy. Yeah.
Real copy. You get it. Thanks for asking about that, John. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. I'm already sort of looking at this episode as a bit of a, we'll see how it plays out, but a bit of a companion episode, because before I ever met you, you were mentioned on this episode way back when I talked to your sister Angela about Crazy Taxi.
Wait, my sister's been on this thing?
Angela was a guest like 2 years ago on this podcast.
Are you fucking kidding? Oh. Okay, for some reason that pisses me off, because Angela's not a gamer. She's an actor. That's okay. Glad to hear that my name quite literally does precede me here.
Yes, I mean, because a lot of the stories that she told, I don't remember the episode, like word for word, but I remember the general feeling, and it was a lot of her tying a lot of game memories had to do with you, and so. Even before we met, I just not that I had a feel for you, but I was like, oh, I've just heard nice nostalgic memories that had you had something to do with them.
That's cool. I feel like those are very little brother memories, I'm sure, especially when Angela and I were playing games.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah, because she was cruel, but no, not really.
Just a kind of a traditional, older sibling, younger sibling, because it's just the two of you, right?
Just us two, yeah.
So, kind of a similar thing for me and my sister. I'm older than her by about 2 years, and so we had a very contentious relationship from, age, I don't know, 8 through, 13, 14, and then we kind of, we're chill outside of those.
Yeah, it cools off.
Yes. And now we get along great, and we're totally different people, but oh man, I've probably talked about this on the show before, but there were times in my life where I was convinced my sister was the most evil person on the planet. And she didn't deserve that. She was just being a person.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Ange was never that bad. I think it's more that I always got the benefit of the doubt from my parents, and Angela never
younger
did.
Sibling.
So I think I really, I kind of let them duke it out, and I was always just little brother eating pizza, It's interesting. Actually, I have early memories of in my bedroom, I had the PlayStation 1 or something, and Angela had the N64 in her bedroom.
Okay.
So if I wanted to go play games on the N64, I'd have to like venture off into her like pink painted room
Ooh.
or whatever. Not that she ever like really, I don't know, played them all that much, but then they were herded into my room, you know.
Yes.
They became mine.
Yes. Oh, that's so great. I mean, hey, what more could anyone want than being a little brother eating pizza? That's kind of my dream role in life, even though I don't have an older sibling. We've kind of gotten into a little bit, as I always like to talk about how I know my guest, but I still, sometimes when I have someone on the show, especially a lot of like my actor improv friends, which is the majority of the people who come on, meeting people in the improv scene, you don't always remember because you kind of pass people forever, and then you just both agree that we don't need to meet. We kind of just know who each other are. But this isn't one of those episodes. I still am like tickled by our sort of, might even call it a meet cute, when we met almost a year ago, I want to say, when I went to Glitch City, which has come up on the show before, a great like, you know, indie space for indie video game makers. And to a Bring Your Own Game, I brought a game that my friend Nick and I made last year, a little sort of visual novel puzzle time loop game. And people were trying it out.
Which I did play.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed. I do want to jump in with that, yeah.
That is so kind of you. Well, I remember like, because I would kind of like leave the desk to like not just stare at the person playing the game, you know, give someone a little space. But I think I came back and you were playing the game, and I do remember you being very effusive and kind with what you had to say about it, which was nice. And I think you and I, we just talked for a little bit. You maybe went and did your own thing. And then I was on my way out, but I said, as I was saying goodbye to you, again, only knowing you through this like last 30-40 minutes or so, I'm looking at you and suddenly I just ask you, wait, are you Angela's brother? And just the look of change on your face and us realizing that we both know your sister was a very funny moment. You probably remember this a little bit.
I do. I think I remember being like, I've heard that phrase being known as and are you Angela's brother?
Yep.
In a space that I so badly wanted to be mine, you know?
Yes, and suddenly that has invaded the indie game space at Glitch. I think this is something you and I have talked about before, but that's definitely something that my girlfriend Amanda has expressed in her life as well, having siblings that are like fairly well known in the entertainment industry. So no surprise there, but that was so funny. I think we sent her like a picture of ourselves or something, and we kept in touch a little bit, you and I. Yeah. And we were talking about before, we went to the Dodgers game with Glitch City this year. Have kept in touch a bit, and I've been wanting to have you on the show, so it's kind of a long catch up, but here you are.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. You know, I remember talking about the show, and you know, how many episodes do you have? Like 500 plus or something?
It feels like that, but you will be episode 225.
Oh, that's a great number. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was like, okay, if he's got 225 other people on this, I was like, you know, I work in games. I'm like, I feel like I'm a good somewhat guest on the show, and then he didn't reach out, you know, and I was a little upset, you know, but then I was like, it's nothing, and then you reached out, and all is well. I'm so glad to be here. I'm glad to talk about myself. I
love it.
I'm excited.
And how close I was to just being just a villain in your life story, but I made up for it. I'm glad, and you know, like you talking about, you know, working in games, having a passion for video games, like you are as like ideal of a guest as comes for the show. But I mean, it's not uncommon for me to have people like your sister or others on who aren't big gamers, but have like a few connections to video games that they can talk about. So yeah, part of the fun in this show, which I've talked about before, is having people like ourselves on, and then people who maybe had like a window, like a season of gaming, sort of.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important, I think, kind of perspective when it comes to games. I'm really passionate about like games as like a medium of art, and I think that in the same way that we talk like music and movies and TV are ubiquitous things for people, right? Like everyone has an album that moved them, or a movie that moved them, or a book or something like that. And I think that games over the last 30, 40 years or something has now become a more ubiquitous medium, but it still it's been tainted by like the gamer kind of persona or something.
For sure.
And I think it's a cool thing to have a space where we can talk to people about games, not as if they're some like, I don't know, like they're a hacker or like they like or they like make Gmod stuff, you know,
yeah.
like no, like yeah, like my sister played Crazy Taxi, and I actually remember us playing Crazy Taxi as kids,
man.
and like those are important like stories to tell. So I think it's a cool thing that you do here.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. You know what? I've decided we can continue doing this episode. That was very nice of you. John, I've talked a lot about, you know, our connection and how we know each other. But what do you want to share with the listener about yourself? I know I introduced you as a game producer, but the floor is yours, dude.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be introduced as a game producer. I both professionally work in games. So I work at Blizzard Entertainment. I work in game cinematics. So I like produce specifically, I'm wearing the shirt, World of Warcraft cinematics, which is another game I would have totally talked about on here because I grew up playing WoW, loved it, and then I had the incredible opportunity to start working on it, which is really cool. But it's also like a AAA studio. This is a massive place where 1,000 different people touch a product. And in my passion for games, I've always wanted to make them. And I have wanted to make them not necessarily just as a cog in the machine, but also as like a creative myself. So as like Connor had mentioned, we both met at Glitch City. I was probably showing a game myself when
you were setting up as I was leaving.
So yeah, me and a buddy, my like I guess collaborator Ian, he and I have made one game called Stickball, and are in production on another game called Guy Sword Budget Cuts, and it's just he and I making these. And I believe I was probably showing like an early version of Guy Sword, which is like a mobile minigame frenzy WarioWare-esque type thing.
Oh man.
Which I guess we were talking about like, oh, you can plug things. I guess I would plug those.
Yes.
So we'll do that. But so like I've always had a passion for games, like I mentioned earlier. I love them as like a medium of art, and it's kind of crazy to think that I am kind of living a childhood dream. Like I do work in video games, right? Obviously it's a little, it's been demystified. I know how the sausage is made now, right?
Yes.
And like, especially like in the AAA sense, not to be a bummer, but like, yeah, working in AAA and knowing that there have been over 22,000 jobs laid off over the last 2 years in games is a really frustrating thing. It makes it really hard to want to be in the space. As people have like talked to me about like, hey, I want to get into games. I quite literally give them a warning of like, hey, this isn't maybe the greatest industry to be working in. But like we were talking about earlier, I think that this show is evidence of like the power that games have outside of their incredible financial success, right? They have a really profound ability to make someone empathize in a way that like movies and books and games, or movies, books and TV and music, you can't, right? Like you don't get to play as a person who is lonely, right? You view someone as lonely and connect with it, but when you're doing that in like Firewatch or something like that, and you really are quite literally doing Ludo narrative mechanics or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Like when you're doing those things, like it creates an opportunity for you to connect to an emotion in a way that really not anything else can do. So like that's kind of like my shtick is like I'm really into what games are. I work in them professionally, and I want to make them in a more intimate setting too.
Yeah, that's amazing. These are things that like we had gotten to talk about before, but like hearing you echo them and maybe even elaborate on them a little bit just has me even more excited to continue to not just talk to you about games, but freaking bro out and be buds. So, John, thank you for sharing about yourself as well. I know that not that we need to share additional details, but you're an LA kid.
Yes.
All
that
you enjoy
stuff.
yourself a pizza, a baseball. I mean, you got it all going on.
Yeah, and like you said, from LA, I live on the west side. I walk to bars and pizza. Both, actually, I have a pizza place in walking distance, and then one of my bars does late night pizza, and it's pretty good. I actually got a free slice the other day. It was really exciting. What else? I golf.
Yes.
Something that actually, if I were to ever be on here another time, I have an extreme passion for like sports video games.
That's right. Yes.
I love sports video games because I grew up a massive Miami Dolphins fan. I would jump in front of a bullet for Tua Tagovailoa. And I just love when I play this one game, which highest recommendation of a mobile game I could ever give, Retro Bowl.
Okay.
It's just a phone game where it's an old kind of side-scrolling football game or whatever. And I have played 26 full seasons or something on it, 18 game seasons. And it's not even I quit if I'm gonna lose. I in my head while I'm playing on the John or in bed or something, I have these little narratives in my head for these players. I get them nicknames, and when we lose in the wild card match, I'm shit, I have to give my Stephen A. Smith take for myself in my brain and then reset the season. I just also just love sports, and I love games too.
Yeah, another place where you and I connect. We've even in our brief time chatting about games have talked about our love for both. I think we talked about Wii Sports and even Mario Golf Toadstool Tour. We've had back and forths about.
God, I just I've never actually played the Toadstool one. My weird thing is that my first entrance into Mario Golf was the Switch one, and I played throughout the entire game when I was sick with COVID. And it wasn't very good. It was solid, because I know of the legacy of the other ones, and I know that I live with a bunch of people, and half of them are moving out. It's just going to be me and my partner, and what that kind of means for our 3-bedroom apartment is that I get to pull out all of my game systems. They're not going to be locked away in some cabinet. So I'm really excited to start playing some of the retro games that I've really wanted to kind of dig into for a while.
Yeah.
But also massive Wii Sports fan. I think Wii Sports is maybe one of the most important pieces of media ever created.
Yeah.
It's the only game you've ever played with your grandma, probably. You know, God, I just love Wii Sports. It's so cool.
It is. By the way, the offer still stands for you to borrow Toadstool Tour.
Yes.
Whenever you want, just you hit me up. You're gonna get your hands on that game.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I want to ask you one question before we dive into your history with games even further, which is I can't remember if we talked about this, but were you a Backyard Sports fan? And if so, are you excited for the Steam release of Backyard Baseball next? I think it's next Friday. No, it's this Friday.
Is it that soon?
Yeah,
Wow.
I think they're just re-releasing the original 1997 game as this new company continues to work on new titles, is the assumption. But yeah, in 3 days from this recording, that game's going to be on Steam. And I'm paying $10 for it, even though I can already play it on Scum VM.
You should pay $10 for it.
Yeah,
that's good.
I want to support them and see what they do next.
I would say that my experience with the Backyard series is very, it's wrong to call it elementary. It's not I have a rudimentary view of it or something, but quite literally in elementary school is when I played it.
Yes.
So I don't have I just remember the vibes of Backyard Baseball, and it's interesting. 2 or 3 years ago, I lived in this house with a bunch of people, and in the backyard, we'd always smoke pre-roll or rolled cigarettes, and one of my roommates always had his big nice MacBook, and he'd be smoking a cigarette, tobacco would be falling on it, and he'd just be clicking on his computer playing Backyard Baseball for fucking hours on end, and I was just entranced by him playing it.
Yes.
And it's the exact same thing as the Retro Bowl thing. You just create these narratives for all these players. It's who's the tall skinny girl? What's her name?
Billie Jean Blackwood?
Yeah.
Trust me, I got all of them cataloged in my head. Yeah. I'm surprised it took me that long.
Her not having her change up is such a funny idea in the back of my brain.
Yes.
So I would say I'm excited.
Very cool. Speaking, you were talking about like, creating narratives for Retro Bowl, and like that's stuff that like I would do both playing like wiffle ball with friends, but also with like any sports game really, but especially the Backyard series where you just like, I just found so many fun ways to play it. That's great. We're about to get into your history with gaming in general, hit some highlights for you, but before we do, will you introduce what you've brought on for the main event later and call me by your game?
Yes, it is. You don't actually put anything in there. Kirby Air Ride.
Well, now I'm going to have to. I'm just going to make the logo appear really quick and disappear. But actually, now that I say that, there's going to be a beautiful background I make, and you might be pointing right to it.
Okay, that may be the moment.
I think it's going to be like straight above us like that.
Okay.
I'm so excited to hear from you about this game. Just in the main event, it's going to be. I'm really thrilled because it's just one of those niche ones that like no one's brought on. So thank you for pitching it as an option.
Which is insane to me.
Yeah,
that's crazy to me because I think Kirby Air Ride, like, it's important, but we'll get into it later.
Ooh, now that's a tease, baby. Well, for you, John, when you think of like your earliest memories playing video games or like watching them, what comes to mind?
Like I said, maybe the earliest memory, and I have to take it back. Angela had the PS1 in her room. I had the N64 in mine. I was like, I'll just let it slip, but no, I'm an honest guest.
No, that's huge. That would have come up later.
I think maybe the earliest memory I have is going to Angela's room to play on the PS1, and I'm pretty sure we had some type of like Sesame Street game.
Awesome.
And I remember nothing about it other than like the 7 polygons that composed the who's the vampire?
It's not just Count Dracula, is it? Maybe it's just the Count.
It's the Count because the whole thing is that he helps you count.
Yeah.
It's make it really easy. Yeah. I think that's maybe actually my earliest memory of playing a game, and like, I should probably dig that up.
That's really cool. But yeah, so like early memories, you got games in the house. We got an N64, a PS1. Do you remember sort of like one of the moments or like a season where you were like actively seeking out games as a kid? Like whether it was just playing what you had or seeing stuff at a friend's house?
You know, I part of me is like, I don't remember like asking for a PS2 for Christmas, but I got a PS2 for Christmas. Yeah, like my privilege is showing I had a PS1, I had an N64, Ooh. We had a PS2. At some point we got a GameCube. Actually, I don't remember the order of operations there, but I do remember, you talk about a season, there was this point in time, my dad works in visual effects, and there was a point in time where I think he was applying for other jobs that were tertiary to the visual effects world.
Yeah.
And he was like interviewing at EA. And I remember he must have gotten pretty deep into the interview process or something. I don't think he never ended up taking the job. But I remember one day he came home with like a stack of like PS2 EA games that they just like gave him, Whoa. I guess. Which is pretty cool. And
like instead of taking like a Dasani water while you're there for the interview, you take a game.
Yeah, I guess I have no idea of the motivation. Yeah. I guess like maybe to research. I have no idea. But I remember like we got this stack of games, and I must have like, that must have been maybe where I got Madden 2003. Another game that I really wanted to talk about on here.
That's right.
One of the most important games in my entire life. Marshall Faulk on the cover. Incredible game. But there was just this point in time in my life, and it's just around that time when I had the PS2 in my room, I had the GameCube in my room, and I was playing like Agent Under Fire. I was playing, what was the other one? Nightfire was the one with Pierce Brosnan in the blue cover, right? I was playing those games, and I was a social kid, so I always had friends over. We were always playing like Double Dash. We're playing just like all of those greatest hits from that era, right?
Yes.
And I think in like some of the pre-roll you mentioned, like the setting. And like I said, it's my bedroom, and I was very lucky. I had a TV in my room, but it was like on my dresser or something.
Okay.
And as like, maybe it's just a childhood memory thing, but I must have had like 7 drawers in that dresser, and it was just like one of those massive TV, like chunky TVs on the top of it. And then I had those like rocking chairs, those like leather. Angela would remember them like in an instant if I brought up those chairs.
We may have talked about these chairs.
Yeah. She probably did. But I remember, like, whenever we'd play games, you would be, like, looking at the TV like this.
Yeah.
And it would just be doing that for hours. Just, like, playing Madden 2003, playing all of those. I remember in Madden 2003, as I said, massive Dolphins fan.
Yes.
And if you know anything about football, being a massive Dolphins fan in the 2000s is a psychotic thing to do, especially if you're like 11. And I would turn off penalties.
Okay.
And I would play against the Patriots. I would, every time I scored, I would do like an onside kick. And because you turned off penalties, the 10-yard rule for onside kicks didn't apply. So I would just kick it directly to my team, get the ball back, and then I'd run all the way back to the 1-yard line so I could take Ricky Williams and get 99-yard touchdowns.
Yeah.
Fucking all morning, baby. And fuck the Patriots, you know?
Oh, that's truly living out your power fantasy in Madden 03.
Yeah.
That's so good. So you would do that? Were you like the type of person, especially now that we're talking about Madden 03, and we can touch on it since we're here, were you the type of person like you do with Retro Bowl where you're like playing seasons? Would you create characters? Like any little details you want to share about that?
Yeah, I think like at the time I was like kind of young and I didn't really understand like what it meant to do like a whole franchise.
Oh, sure.
I think like as I got older, it clicked and I would have franchises. I have one in like my Madden 22 on my PS5 where Jalen Waddle had like a 4,000-yard season last year. But I do remember, and this is something that the games don't do anymore, is playing with the throwback teams.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you could like play with Dan Marino. And like it's such a funny thing that it's like only people in their like 40s or 50s, they'd find it so charming that I'm like, I love Dan Marino, and I would take every chance to play with him. But I just remember playing with those old teams and just like, I don't know, it was a way for me to also kind of connect with like the history of football too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of like our modern day gladiators, you know. So
yeah, that's great. I was a fan of like that era specifically of the Madden series. Like, I don't think I played 03, although I was a Rams fan for almost most of my life. I stopped being like, I still like the NFL, but I kind of like dropped the Rams. I just realized I wasn't emotionally attached to them anymore. So when a season started a couple years ago, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to watch the league and enjoy it, but I don't really feel a tie to them. And that was the year that they won the Super Bowl. And it truly, and I didn't jump back on the bandwagon while it was happening. Which like, don't fault anybody who does, but it really felt like a good friends team won, where you're like, like John's going to be really happy because
I'm so happy for them. Yeah. Do you just wear like an NFL hat? Or are you just like an
I wear a Roger Goodell shirt specifically. No, I don't really have like I still have a really nice Sam Bradford Rams jersey from when they were in St. Louis. And I have like a couple T-shirts, but no, not really. But anyway, just I have a real tie to like that era. I think the 05, which is the Ray Lewis cover. Yes. That was my personal favorite, just because it's the one I played the most.
Was that 05? I think you're right, because then I think 06 is Donovan McNabb.
It might have been, yeah. And then 04 was Michael Vick.
04 was Michael Vick, and then 07 is Sean Alexander with the Seahawks jersey.
And then Vince Young after that?
Is Vince Young 08? Oh my God, you may be right. Vince Young is 08.
Might be. And then it falls apart for me after that. Like, 'cause I stopped getting them after Vince Young, and I even skipped a couple in there, but I love those. So we're in our golden era. Did you want to while we're talking about, your PS2 and GameCube days, you talked about, I think, was it Agent Under Fire was the
Agent Under Fire was Agent Under Fire is kind of like a game I think of. I'm actually transported to my aunt's childhood bedroom in their home in like Florida or something like that. And I was like with me and all of my cousins, and this room, again, Angela would know exactly the room I'm talking about. It's this room that like was made out of a green satin pillow is the best way to describe it. And there was a TV in the corner. It's also the TV where I watched like my first episode of Breaking Bad on like cable like one night. Crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Started my love for Breaking Bad. But really important television room for me. Because whenever we'd visit every year during Christmas. We'd fly to Florida on Christmas Day.
I've heard of these trips around the holidays.
Yeah, they're it's a lot.
Yeah.
But I remember like me and all my cousins, I think either they would bring their GameCube down or sometimes I'd bring mine. But I remember we'd play Agent Under Fire. And we'd either just replay the opening 2 levels over and over and over again of the campaign, or we do like that multiplayer kind of style, the arcade mode, where you would just like, it'd be you and the 4 other people, and then you'd add like Dr. No as like as a CPU, and you'd like pick up the guns, like kind of like the classic shooter like multiplayer thing.
Yeah.
We just played for hours on end, and it's just the happiest I've ever been, and I don't think I'll ever be happier. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, that's where the bar is set, and it's everything is going to fall under that from now on.
And it's honestly it's the high that I think like for all time I like chase when I'm playing games.
Yes. Well, we're gonna have to. So, like, I would love to have you back on at some point. I finally, truly, it wasn't until like episode like 205 that I started having people back on for solo episodes, despite threatening that from like the first few I ever did. So it's been really fun to have people who were on genuinely like 4.5 years ago come back and share about a different story. So John, you can expect in about 2028, 2029 me inviting you back.
Yeah, I'll talk about like classic WoW or something. I
love it. But all that being said, I'll kind of steer us back to you a little bit. So I would love to know, like, after this sort of the golden era that I'm now labeling for you of the GameCube and PS2, where did gaming go for you after that? What are some like maybe high school highlights that you remember?
Yeah. Talking a little bit about WoW. I remember actually I guess it started in elementary school, and it was one of those things that kind of peaked in and out of my life all throughout grade school.
Yeah.
I remember like going over a friend's house and his older brother was playing, and I was like, I'll try a free trial or something, and I got bit by the WoW bug.
Yeah.
It was like for a long time it was like the only PC game I played because I was a big console player. But yeah, I was bit by the WoW bug, and I played like a little bit in Burning Crusade and a little bit in Wrath of the Lich King, and then I played a lot. I guess this is really irrelevant for anyone who doesn't play WoW, but then I played a lot in Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria, and this was me and my buddies from church. We would basically, it would be like Friday. I would like go to like church was like 30 minutes away from my parents' house or something. So what I would do is my parents would drop me off at like my buddy's house, and 2 of my friends lived closer to church, and they were also like basically down the street from each other.
Okay.
And what we would do is I would get dropped off on Friday, and I would just be there until Sunday morning. We'd go to church, and then I'd just go back home with my parents, and all I'd have to do is I'd bring my little laptop, and we would just sit in my buddy's garage, quite literally garage.
Yes.
And there was a couch in that garage and a TV, and we would just sit on our laptops, and we would play WoW all fucking day. It was sublime.
That is heaven on earth. That is amazing. That's
like,
exact kind of like memory that like I like still fawn over like those moments I had with my friends. So I love hearing this.
Yeah, and like we have this like the couch that we would play on would then fold out into a bed, and then it would be like 3 growing young men all on this couch, and then for some reason, like all the time, it'd be like in the middle of the night, we'd all be sleeping, and the couch would fold in on itself. Like laptops would be like flying, and we'd be like, oh my god, trying to like undo the couch,
Yes.
Just so much WoW. It was also like they'd play Minecraft. I wasn't a big Minecraft kid.
Mm-hmm.
WoW. you're really uncovering some stuff, because there's a whole nother era like right before that where I'd go to a different friend's house and they had like the gaming setup, because it was like 3 boys and it was on one wing of their house, was just like past the laundry room, past the kitchen, the boys' room. And it was just like 4 TVs, 4 Xboxes, and that was like when we'd just be playing like Halo multiplayer, all that good stuff. You know, just I guess like girls growing up, they'd like, I don't know what they would do, but that's all we did was just like play games.
Just living the life.
Yeah.
That's so good. Like I missed out on the WoW bug. I do remember the first time I saw a friend playing it like at his house in my neighborhood. We had like a decent PC that I would game on growing up. It was just like the family computer that did the job, but never had that. But I did have a Halo phase. Like I remember getting into it, seeing it truly at a friend's birthday that they all played it, and I just kind of got introduced to it, and I immediately like had to have Halo. So had my time there. This is great. I would love to know for you, when you look back at like your history with gaming, I've just got a few more questions.
Yeah.
Do you have like, if you had to pick a favorite console, is it one of those like the PS2 or GameCube, like a most nostalgic one, or is it a different one we're not thinking of?
You know, you talk about high school or middle school-ish, a very formative system for me was the PlayStation 3.
Oh,
I mean, also
nice.
the Wii. Wow, they all have such a moment, but I think that like the PlayStation 3 holds this place because like my best friend growing up, I remember in like 5th grade, he had like the PlayStation magazine or something like that, and it was showing off the Ratchet and Clank that was going to be coming out for the PlayStation 3. And at that same time, you'd be seeing, I don't know if you remember these, but like those fake like composites of like what the next system would look like.
Oh, sure.
And I remember there was this one for the PS3. It was like white, and it was so impractical, right? And it just like looked like a little boomerang controller. And it was just like this incredibly beautiful white station or whatever. And I think that's maybe why like the PlayStation 3 idealizes what I think the future looks like. And I still think that the future ended when the PlayStation 3 came out. The PS4 and the PS5, they look the same, you know? The PS3 is where everything changed in my eyes.
Yeah.
It's also, me and the same buddy, we joke that, like, if I were to say that, like, what is $600? He would say a PlayStation 3. $600 is the perfect encapsulation, or a PlayStation 3 encapsulates the value of $600 perfectly in like 2006 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But oh my God, there was something about the PS3. I think it was where I, like any teen in like the 2000s, it's where I first interacted with Call of Duty. Right? It was other than World of Warcraft, it was the only other place I had like an online presence, where like you're playing with like grown men who are like smoking weed, and you're like, what is that? You know, like. And also, yeah, like all the Ratchet and Clank games. It was also like where I felt systems were trying to give you more, and like when you were paying for it, right? I mean, my parents were paying. But like, yeah, like cross compatibility was important to them, right? Like you could play old games. Remember the controller, the buzz in the controller. There was just so, and the triggers. I just love the triggers. People don't like the PS3 controller. I feel like I'm ranting about the PlayStation, but I think that's the point of the show.
No, exactly.
But there was something about that time in my life. Same situation with my head tilted up, you know. But I was like getting older. My voice was cracking.
Yep. Well, it was like
shooting
the first wireless PlayStation controller, I want to say.
Yeah, I think so.
Did it have the thing that the PS2 controller had where the buttons were like sensitive to like pressure? So like you could, I remember playing like Metal Gear Solid honestly only in the last few years, and like Metal Gear Solid 2, where if you held down like square as opposed to like pressing it once, it did something kind of different.
Yeah.
Did it? I don't know if it had. I can't remember if it had that on the PS3.
I do remember that it was maybe. No, I remember trying to understand when I was a child what R3 meant.
Oh,
that was like a big mystery until like I guess grew up, right? Mm-hmm. I guess I got smart and you just had to press down on those. I feel like it never gave you the actual feedback itself. Like the PS5 one, like it thickens up, right? It adds like tension. But I do think that there was like a difference between like tapping and holding.
Okay.
I do think that was a thing in the PS3 controller.
That sounds right to me too. I was just kind of curious thinking about the difference between the 2 and the 3 controller.
I also want to add my controller was like a commando forest green.
Oh, nice.
And I think it's like my favorite color ever, maybe because of my association with playing video games.
Oh, that's so great. Do you have, I know you mentioned Call of Duty and maybe like looking forward to some Ratchet and Clank. Is there another PS3 title that comes to mind that you like had a time with?
It actually is going to tie into the game that you just call me by. But in, I think, a similar headspace, it was also a different friend I grew up who, one of those friends that like after middle school you've literally never heard from again. They're seemingly gone, they've disappeared. But this friend and I, we played Kirby Air Ride a lot, and then we also played a lot of Little Big Planet.
Oh,
and Little Big
gosh.
Planet had this like promise. And I still think it does. It holds this promise for like what the future of like collaboration and like and helping each other, what it's all about.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. It was like kind of the epitome of like what like stylized graphics can look like on a machine that can do something cool. Like maybe I wonder if I like looked at it now if it looked like shit. But like
maybe
there was something about Little Big Planet and all of its systems, perhaps it was also just like a very Japanese title for like the Western world for like a kid in LA who like doesn't like is very Western. But there was something about that game that really like tittled a creative thing in me that I think is like aspirational.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think about that series too, and I know there was a title released early in the PS5's life cycle, but just that, and maybe on the heels of having the new Astrobot come out, everyone, including myself, are just like, wow, what if Sony did more stuff like this? It's just, there's so much joy and, like you said, promise there that really makes you sort of just long for those types of games. And I've never even played Little Big Planet, and I look at Sackboy and I'm like, I want to feel what that feels like on him. Like, and I bet he seems like a fun guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, those games they were just, it was like also maybe like the first sandbox game that like I interacted with and like level making stuff and like sharing those levels, right? Like now I think like kids are so accustomed, they like understand what like server lists are and they like, they know how to like download like a Fortnite like custom map or something like that. I think maybe Little Big Planet was my first, like, you're playing someone else's map. Someone made this and they live in Delaware or something.
Yeah, far more of a novel thing back then. There's several things like that, like that I look back at those generations of gaming that like were new and introduced to us that were special. And stuff like that still happens with games, but like certain little moments like those two were very special. I love that. I've got just a couple more questions for you.
Let me turn on some light for you.
Oh, light it up, brother.
Oh my god.
I love it. Wow. We got hops over there. That was a pretty good job. So what I want to ask you first is, what have you been playing more recently that has really like piqued your interest? And if you don't have one, what's a game you're looking forward to that you haven't played yet?
I am currently, I'm playing 2 games. Something that is part of my childhood dream that I'm living out is that I let myself buy quite literally any video game that I like kind of want because I say, oh, it's my career.
Yeah.
So like what I've played most recently has been I've been playing Deadlock, which is like the Valve like shooter like MOBA thing.
Yes. It's in
really crazy.
It's technically early access, kind of.
It's a fake early access thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, you want a code? Once you put it on your wish list, you get an email the next day, I think.
Yes.
And, you know, I think like Deadlock and Valorant are two examples of games where I feel old. Like I can't hang, you know.
Yep.
But there's something about Deadlock that I'm really enjoying. It's like the hero design's really fun. I'm playing with a buddy, and we're just like, it's that. I also play like a lot of like competitive games like MOBAs and like I used to play a lot of CSGO and things like that. So like there's a lot of like known strats, right? That like everyone employs that like, oh, like I'm just not good enough, right? For some of those things. And I think that like for me, Deadlock is in that really early stage where it's just like, oh, I'm playing and I'm having fun. I'm not thinking about how I should be playing, you know? So I'm enjoying that. I've also been playing on my PlayStation 5. I think I've played the first 2 levels. We're so thankful you're here, or
it's like a humor adventure, right?
Okay, so it's published by Panic.
Something else?
No, it's the same thing. So the best way I can describe it, first off, it's the first time I've ever played a game like this, which is just it's so cool. It is like if you like turned on Cartoon Network or something, and were then handed a controller and you were playing like an episode of an animated cartoon.
Yes.
And it's so clever. All of it's like little mechanics. It's really funny. I play it stoned, you know.
Nice.
I like you just like really just get enveloped in it, and it's fantastic. I cannot recommend it enough. Really cool game.
Is it British humor?
I think it's a British studio. I know it's published by Panic, who's in Portland.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure it's a British studio. And the guy who does some of the voice acting is, don't remember the actor's name, but he's the guy who does Laszlo in What We Do in the Shadows.
Okay, gotcha. Yes.
That guy. So, and he's fantastic.
I forget his name too, and he's like super famous.
Yeah, he's very famous.
Yes. That's awesome. I was hearing about that game, I think around when it came out earlier, maybe over the summer actually. Yeah. Just hearing a lot of people really enjoying it. It sounds up my alley too, because I don't know if it's exactly a point and click adventure, but I do like those style of games.
Yeah. It feels like, it's more like it's like a point and click that's fluid, I guess.
Okay, gotcha.
You know? But point and click in nature where you're like going to an area and you're interacting with a thing, you know? Also another plug of a game I'm playing, Arco, which came out somewhat recently, I think.
Yeah.
Are you playing it?
No, but we just have someone in our Discord who loves it, and it's like on my little Steam wish list now.
Yeah. I play it on my Steam Deck, and it's like my in-bed game that I can play for like 15 minutes. So far, it's only just been really sad. It's like a very like colonial like violence game, I think, which is cool as shit. Like, talk about games that can like have you interact with really important stories. Really cool to see that. I think that may also be published by Panic, maybe. Oh. No, I think I forgot who it is. I'm into publishers right now because I think I'm trying to get a job in publishing.
I gotcha, okay.
But whatever. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't. No one's going to watch this from work, who cares?
And if you need me to take it out, it's, you know what, then we don't even know what I'm talking about now. You let me know. The last question I'm going to present to you before we head to break is there a game, any game from your past, that if you don't mention it on this episode, that you haven't mentioned already, that you would just be so bummed that didn't get a little shout out? It could be like an obvious one, it could be like a niche one, but just in case you had one you didn't get to say.
You know, I mentioned it very briefly in passing, but I will say it again. I think Firewatch is like one of the most important games for me, in that I think it's the thing that kind of brought me to this opinion of like, oh shit, games can do something beyond just be this fun thing. You know, they really do push like an envelope of things. Wait, shit, another one just crossed by my brain in like a shooting star fashion, and it's fucking gone.
Oh no,
because. Oh, okay, another one. Okay, I remembered it. Because it's kind of the inspiration for one of the games that me and Ian made, Stickball. It's kind of similar in function. Florence. Which was it's like it's on like a lot of things. I think you can play it on Switch. I think you can buy it on your phone. I'd recommend buying it on your phone. It's one of those just like, is it a game? Is it just like an interactive narrative? You know, but it's a game that like makes you want to cry. And it's like I would recommend both Firewatch and Florence if you're like, oh, games are dumb. It's like, no, they're cool and important.
Check these out. I finally played Firewatch last year, right around this time, and absolutely adored it and was like so into it and really, really made an impact. So that's cool to hear about from you too. Well, John, thank you for sharing, a percentage of your history with gaming, with me today.
I'm so sorry it was so scattered at times. I was like, what am I going to talk about for an hour? And then I'm like, I could talk about this shit for literally all day.
Yes.
It's crazy.
No apologies necessary. That was really fun. You gave me so much to talk about. And honestly, it's one of those, this happens every so often where I'm like, oh, we could have done this. This could be the whole episode. Well, we're going to head to a quick break. And then when we come back, we'll finally get into everything Kirby Air Ride. So, John, I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game. Connor McCabe still here with John Giarratana getting ready to discuss Kirby Air Ride. John, welcome back.
Woo! Thank you for having me back.
You are gosh darn welcome. Like I told you before the show, we're going to do a little table setting for the listener about this game, just in case they're not familiar. And again, if you want to jump in at any time to add context, to share an anecdote that's important about the game, or just to be like, Connor, the thing you read from Wikipedia is actually inaccurate, just please know that you can do that.
You got it.
All right. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and start us off with this. Kirby Air Ride is a 2003 racing video game, which already I'm like, racing, it's more than just racing, baby. Starring, of course, everyone's favorite pink puffball Kirby, developed by HAL Laboratory and published by Nintendo for the GameCube. Kirby Air Ride has the players and computer-controlled racers ride around on air ride machines. I think the only one that I saw in the gameplay videos I watched was, of course, Kirby's famous power. Is it a Power Star or Superstar? I don't know what he calls it.
This may be too much context, but if I remember correctly, I don't remember the actual names of the stars, but there's a yellow star.
Yes.
And then there's like the orange star, and the orange star goes faster.
Oh. Fancy.
That's like a 12-year-old anecdotal memory of the distinction between the stars.
Yes, just like something imprinted in your brain. Yeah, I saw the yellow one, I think, is the player. The 40 minutes that I watched, someone was just using the yellow one. But the game supports up to 4 players locally and was the first GameCube title to support LAN play using broadband adapters and up to 4 GameCube systems. It was the final Kirby game directed by series creator Masahiro Sakurai, who a lot of people probably know as the main director of the Super Smash Bros. Series. Game.
I did not know that.
Yes, he also created Kirby. I'm almost positive.
Yeah, that because I also, just to make sure I knew anything about Kirby Air Ride and talked about it, double checked the Wikipedia.
Yes.
And I read that and I was like, oh, cool. It's the same guy that directed the initial ones, probably created it. I had no idea it was the same guy, and that makes so much sense.
Yes. Especially
for reasons that we'll get into.
Yes, I had watching the game too, there was a very specific thing that I was like, we'll get there. This game had according to Wikipedia, a convoluted development cycle starting as one of the first wave of Nintendo 64 games, so it was supposed to be an early N64 title before undergoing numerous revisions to the basic concept and being even canceled for a time. But upon its release for the GameCube, it saw mixed reception from critics who criticized its what they called simplicity, but it was a commercial success for the console, selling over 1.2 million copies worldwide, which was a big deal for the GameCube. Which
the audacity for someone to knock it down for being simple, that's
simple isn't
that's
bad.
Unnerving,
simple can be great.
Yeah. Simple's magical sometimes. Okay.
Yeah. Critics, or if you hear us, The game has developed a cult following since then, with dedicated fans praising the game's Battle Royale multiplayer for being ahead of its time and and people continue to play the game through emulator online play. I'm assuming through the Dolphin emulator or some other means. John, I know we shared a little bit of additional context. Are there like bullet points that we should also know about this game before we dive into your time with it?
So I guess the bullet points that I would like to highlight are, there is one part of Kirby Air Ride that makes it what I think important, and that is the city trial mode. The other two modes are like you caught it. You're like a racing game, it's a normal racing game. It's just a racing game. Cool. There was like this like 3D version of just like kind of feels like Mario Kart or something like that. And then there was a top-down like mini game thing, which was actually very fun. Kind of feels like gambling a little bit. Not that like it had any gambling aspects. It just like there was a lot of like good sounds, when you hit a jackpot, dings and shit. That was really fun. But what makes this game so profound is the city trial mode.
Yes.
The same like vehicles that you use in the normal game or in like the normal racing mode are all in like the city trial mode, and we can like talk about that more in depth.
Yeah.
But like I just want to make sure that like we're really talking about Kirby Air Ride City Trial. That's kind of the bulk of this. Yeah.
Coincidentally, you maybe had told me that, but I had like that was a big part of your experience in our correspondence. But coincidentally, after forgetting it, that is a lot of what I watched on the YouTube playthrough, which was like this guy repeatedly doing city trial stuff, and then like some sub games in between going back to that. Well, I'm so stoked to get into this because it's a game that truly I've never picked up once, and since I had a GameCube, like I anticipated the GameCube. I got one like right after Christmas after it came out. I had saved up enough money and went and like bought it at Costco, but right before Christmas break ended. Like I love this thing, but I missed this game growing up. I probably knew about it from Nintendo Power, and I've still never touched it to this day. So I'm extra selfishly excited to hear from you about this. I believe that you told me that, I don't know if it was a game that you said you got or your friend had, but you had like a tie-in to a friend with the PS3, I want to say.
Yeah, well, first off, it's interesting that you say that, like, it's... For me, like you talk about like, going through and getting a GameCube, reading it in Nintendo Power or something like that. Actually, I think for me, it almost feels like something that was like inserted by some cosmic being into my life. It's just like one day I walked into my room and Kirby Air Ride was there.
Yes.
I have no memory of acquiring it. I have no memory of like wanting to play it or anything like that. It just was a game I owned.
Yes.
And like, seemingly some divine being like entered into my life to say, this is important.
This is kind of a phenomenon that we talk about on the show occasionally, because the nature of this show, looking back, in this case, 20 some years into your past or so, people were not always going to remember those details. So sometimes it feels like, it just dropped into your life for a very important reason for you. So, but that's kind of you getting us into it. It kind of was just there. When you think about playing this game, what are some of the first details you want to highlight?
I think the first thing that I actually, when like going through and like watching some videos about it, I was actually very upset. When we decided we were going to do Kirby Air Ride, I like ran over to that cabinet of games that I told you that's currently hidden away. And I'd brought some of my games from my parents' house because like I also, like I said, privileged kid, I have like those like piles of games of my childhood, right? And they're all meaningful. And I remember pulling out some of like the big hitters, right?
Yes.
Like I think I have like Animal Crossing in there. I've got like Smash Bros, Melee, etc. And I was very upset to see that I did not bring Kirby Air Ride home.
Yes.
And it's possible that it's one of those games that also, if some cosmic figure of goodness and joy came and brought it to me, some demonic, impish devil took it from me, and that's probably just one of my friends, fucker. But I forgot where I was going with that. It's just no idea where I was going.
I think
with
you were
that,
talking about like when you went to. I think you were going to try to play it again on the lead up.
I was gonna go. I was gonna go play it, and I was very upset to find out that I didn't have it. So I was like, shit. I have to like remember something about this game other than just the joy of playing it. So I like watched some playthroughs of it, and something that I saw is that the city trial mode apparently is 7 minutes, which in my memory, I know that there's like a sandbox mode, and I must have played the sandbox mode, but I have no memory of a timer because I have a memory of being in that little city world for like hours, hours on end, with just like infinite moments of like driving around. The city's actually so I'll talk about the city trial mode if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of ahead of its time in my eyes, where it's this kind of sandbox place where you enter the game mode, and you, like Connor said, it's between 1 and 4 players. Apparently it was the first LAN. I never played it with 16 other people. I played it with like just some like childhood friends on our fun GameCube controllers. I miss those things.
So good.
And you just spawn in, and you're like in this little city, right? It's like if you had like a child draw a city, like it's kind of like that, and then someone made a 3D render of it.
Yeah,
and
for some reason there's a volcano just adjacent to the city, that sort of thing.
Volcano with like the spiraling like kind of like dragons jumping over this bridge that go into the volcano. There's all this incredible landmark work, and I think that like what's worth noting about like it being on the GameCube, and also it was interesting to learn when I was reading the Wikipedia about how it was supposed to be in the N64. Like what that kind of tells me is that like the director clearly wanted this to be the foray of Kirby into 3D game space.
Yes.
You know? And like I don't know for a fact if there is another Kirby before this that maybe was in 3D space, but it's very clear that like this game was designed to be like a 3D game, right?
Yes.
And like polygonally, it's so amusing. It's beautiful, right? Like you look at Kirby, and Kirby is like literally like maybe 9 polygons. It's just like his little fucking cute, incredible feet. I actually, my buddy just came back from Japan. I told him get me the stupidest thing he could get from Japan that was Kirby related, and he got me like 2 little figurines. One just like an actual, just a little Kirby.
So
right? Look
cute.
how cute he is. He's perfect, right?
What do you need?
His little arms. And then also he got me a bath bomb that once it's a Kirby bath bomb, and once it disperses, there's a little Kirby figurine inside of it. So I'm very excited to do that. Shout out to Henry. Thank you for
that's so sweet.
But there was something about like all of those little polygons that are just so wonderful. There's these trees that look like Torrey Pines trees in off the Torrey Pines golf course in San Diego. There's this like very weird city that like there's a big star structure that like you can crash into. Crazy. There's like, this is really important to me. There's a monorail that basically goes the width of circumnavigates the entire map, and it's actually really upsetting to like see that as an adult, because like in the Kirby fucking city they have a functioning like public transit system
and we don't.
that like we don't have. I guess actually now that I think about it, it's more kind of like the Elon Musk like tunnel thing, because you get on your car and you just go over.
Yes, you're not hopping on a train that's moving around with other people. You are on your individual like motor or whatever.
Yeah. But actually I like have memories of like playing with friends. So to get back into actually what the gameplay is actually very simple. You are just like in this map, and you're just like running around, right?
Yeah.
You're like exploring. There's like cars around that you pick up. It's almost like a GTA. You just get on a car, right? And you drive around. There's a lot of different cars, some very memorable ones. There's this like pink square, kind of looks like a food truck, and Kirby like sits on top of it. He's fucking adorable, and he's just like scooting around. It's not very fast, and there's different cars that are faster than others. One that I think I uncovered a very weird connection, Connor, when I was researching this. There was this car that I loved so much. It was really a Vespa. And it's like this Vespa that had like a little eyeball on it. And it had that like like kind of like matte emerald kind of teal color to it. And I loved that little Vespa.
Yeah.
And then I'm transported to this memory of like when my family, we went on like a cruise to Italy once. And I remember like being 13 or 14 and walking around the streets of Italy and like seeing a Fiat and being like, that's my dream car.
Yeah.
That's when I decided my dream car. And I'm pretty sure it was because it reminded me of that little fucking Vespa.
That's so good.
But you just drive around, but the cool thing is that like you explore this map and you realize that there are kind of more than meets the eye across this map. There are things that you can like break into with your car. There are little power-ups that can make it easier for you to glide around. We were talking about that volcano earlier. You can go into that volcano and there's like an ice area under it.
Ooh.
That like during there would be like these like little events where there would be like these boxes that would drop down that would either drop cars or power-ups, and you'd find like some of like the rare cars in some of these like secret places.
Yeah.
And that's also like my first memory of like Dragoon, the thing that you assemble in the Smash Brothers games.
Yes.
Yeah. So you assemble the pieces to Dragoon.
Thing.
Yeah, you assemble the pieces to Dragoon in the cityscape. So you don't, because it's like the best car, that and the Hydra. The Hydra is a sick green thing. It looks like a fucking scorpion or something. And they were both like the best cars.
Yeah.
But the pieces would drop around the map. So you'd have to go and get the pieces, right? And once you assembled it, you had this like fucking badass car.
Yeah.
And it was just, there was something about the exploration of the game that wasn't really anything I'd ever had before.
Yes.
And doing that with friends in like a couch co-op setting was just enamoring. It was incredible.
I love that. And you're only like different colored Kirbys, right? It's not like you're playing as Meta Knight or
you're only different colored
cool.
Kirby. That's the
All
best
right.
fucking part. I was always the also in Smash Brothers. I often was like the white with the black feet one.
Yes.
I love that one for some reason.
Yeah. That's so great. Yeah, I can totally understand why this mode was so just exciting and just felt like such a fun place to play in, because
yeah,
I could, having not played it myself, I was watching this guy zip around and I was like, ooh, can you get up there? Well, I wonder what happens if he tries to like bash into that sphere or whatever.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. I would like to know from you have already given us a little bit of description of your room. Can you sort of scene paint your room for me, like where you had this set up, and like just like describe to me what your room was like and maybe where it was in your house?
Absolutely. So my parents have a 2-story house. You go up the stairs, and Angela and my parents' room was on the right, like across like a hallway, and on the left was my room.
Away from everybody.
I have a
That's
separate
sick.
area. Yeah, it's honestly, I think that's maybe one of the little brother things that Angela resents about me. I also had the walk-in closet, and she didn't.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow, big get for you.
Yeah, huge. I also had a separate bathroom from like the actual room in my bedroom.
Yeah.
And so you'd take a left up the stairs and you go down into my room, and you'd walk into my room, and I have various setups of what my room looked like.
Yes.
But always on the right side, once you pass the closet, was the dresser with the TV.
Okay, yes.
And the TV was like, it's, I don't want to be all trendy and say it was like some CRTV that is good or something.
Yes.
It was like one of those TVs that was like, it was heavy as shit. It was probably a CRTV, but I don't think it's like some notable one or whatever.
Sure.
But it was like, it was also silver.
Okay,
like the casing of it.
I remember when they started doing those.
Yeah. And like I said, it was very high up. I don't remember exactly how my games rested. I believe they were on the left side on some type of entertainment console thing, or because I thought I was such a genius for being able to like set up my games. Sometimes they were on the floor if I had to like switch out which system was in.
Yeah.
And then I'd be sitting behind that. So like TV's here, like this is a terrible way to describe it. TV here. right? My bed was here, and then my little rocking chairs were
right
here,
there.
right?
It's a great visual for the YouTube viewers, for sure.
And we'd be looking up, and just like playing like this, eating Cheetos and stuff. And it's another thing that's worth noting is I was talking about events. Some of the events were just like power-ups fall from the sky, yay, right? Every once in a while, and this is I think maybe the fantastical nature of the game, was there would be some batshit fucking event. Like there would be like a caution sign. And I remember, like, there would be, it's some character from the Kirby series, I don't know his name, but, like, a massive fucking Firebird or something.
Yeah.
Like, in the town square, and I don't even remember what you did with it. I think you attacked it. I have no memory, but I just remember being, like, horrified.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would rain. Oh, oh my God. But yeah, that was, like, kind of the setup of these moments, like the first row in a movie theater type looking up stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just looking back, I'm sure it's got to be different nowadays, but I also remember TVs sitting higher up than they should have been on stuff, whether like the cabinet was tall or it was on a dresser. I think mine also sat on a dresser when I eventually got a TV in my room. And was the console, would it sit up there too, or would it be on the floor with like the cables dangling down?
I think it was either on a console to the left of it, like an entertainment console, or it was on the floor. I have memories of it being on the floor.
Sure. Did you ever have...
popping up the GameCube top.
Oh, just...
I love opening the top of that thing.
I'm like looking over at mine on the floor right now. I can probably show you a little bit. I'll just move my camera slightly. You can see the GameCube down there with my old CRT TV. You're going to have to fiddle with that thing at some point. But... Anyway, did you ever have a Wavebird, the wireless controller, on your GameCube? I had one.
It was called a Wavebird?
Yes.
I don't remember what it was called. But it was like it was actually the same silver paint as my TV.
Oh, cool.
I actually have it somewhere probably like deep in my house.
Yeah.
But like, and it's also like the fucking C-stick is destroyed.
Yes.
But yeah, I had one of those chunky ones.
Yeah.
And it was like the adapter was that big, like concrete looking thing with a dot.
Yeah, that's the Wavebird. Yeah, it was a huge deal when that came out.
Oh my God!
And because I had a gray one, which was the first model, and then they did have silver ones, which always looked way more sleek and cool. So I'm jealous.
I also
of that.
had some of those off market. I forget what the brands were called. It was like Game Paw or something like that. It was like a really ergonomic.
Mad Cats
GameCube thing. Mad Cats. What did I say? Game Paw.
I'll take
Mad
Game
Cats.
Paw.
Exactly. Yeah, and I remember because it was like it looked like a PS2 controller, but it was a GameCube controller, and it had like rubber handles.
Yes.
Yeah, that thing was sick.
Yeah, those I feel like those would get bought. It's like, oh, it's a cheaper option than like paying full price for another controller, and then when you get home with it, you're like, at least the ones I played with. Maybe this is a stereotype of just like, oh, these things suck. You give them to the person who's like your sibling or the guest in the house.
Exactly.
You talked about playing this with your friend. Do you have like just like general? Was this a friend who would come over all the time? Do you have any like sort of vague or specific memories of? It doesn't even have to be Kirby Air Ride, but.
So I have a memory. So I would associate this game with Wyatt Dominy.
Wyatt.
Who, again, this is the friend evaporated from existence, seemingly. And he had a house. His house was like in Van Nuys, I think. And I remember he had a crazy big backyard.
Ooh.
Angela was friends with his sister.
Okay.
And we would like both go over there and play. And I remember that was actually my first memory of like their really older brother. Wow, this is weird stuff. Their really older brother, Hunter, I think he went to law school. He had like a birthday and he had a Matrix cake, which was really cool.
Okay, Hunter's cool.
Yeah. I bet he's probably 40 now.
Yeah.
Insane. And I mean, yeah, their backyard was crazy. Wyatt never wore shoes. He was like a barefoot kid, right? I don't think I could reasonably have a relationship with a barefoot kid anymore. But yeah, so, and I remember we'd go over to his house or we'd come over to my house. And this was probably around the time where our friendship was like, probably when we were going to like middle school or something, where we probably stopped seeing each other more when Kirby Air Ride was out.
Yeah.
But I remember, we'd like play around and we'd come in and play Kirby Air Ride and things like that. Also, his brother, oh my God, they were who I had my first memories of Star Fox 64.
Oh, cool.
Because I remember thinking, I'm like, that's the hardest game ever made. No one has ever beat Star Fox 64 or something like that. And like to this day, I'm like kind of afraid to play it because I feel like I'm like, I would be so bad at it. You know, I'm sure I'd be incredibly competent. I could probably beat it.
Yes.
But I don't know if I could do that to myself and fail myself like that.
After you've built it up to be such a thing at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. That's so funny. That game, I mean, I have a lot of experience with it. It's a game you could definitely beat, but like it kind of has like a scaling difficulty where you can choose a path that's harder. So my best friend growing up, actually, Eddie, who I mention all the time on the show, that's his favorite game of all time. And he, like, watching him play that is like watching, I don't know, like Tiger Woods play golf or something. Just see someone do something so perfectly at the highest difficulty. It's amazing. When I take the easy route and like barely get by with not the true ending. But so many that I'd loved hearing from you about, like going over to Wyatt's and these specific memories too of his older brother and the bare feet. That's so good. When it comes to Kirby Air Ride, I just got a couple more questions for you on this segment. Is there another detail that you remember about it that you want to highlight? Whether it was like, how about this? I'm going to pivot. I'm taking away that question, but just know it stands if you have more details you want to share.
Yeah.
We were talking about Masahiro Sakurai, the director of this game, and the Kirby directors, Super Smash Brothers. As soon as I started watching gameplay footage of this, the menu, the UI,
menu, that's exactly what,
how it responded and like just the way like things would transition, I was like, this is exactly the template they used for Smash Melee, at least. Yeah.
And I think that like that, it speaks to, I think, the the design of like maybe it's the UI, but I think it's more that like, okay, this game does not like inherently, its replayability is with your friends, right? Like, and I think that there's not that many of those types of games that are being made anymore because like you play online multiplayer games, right? You don't play these like LAN things much anymore, right? Oh my God, my cat's scratching at the door. She needs to get in.
Hey, do your thing. Let your cat in.
Come here. And it's something that me and Connor relate to is both being fathers of tuxedos.
Yay! Would you remind me of your tuxedo's name?
This is Miso. Why isn't she?
Miso! Oh, she's blending into the, I assume, World of Warcraft background.
Yes, this is the bridge in Hillsbrad Foothills.
Okay, perfect. I can put myself there now. Great.
Yeah. So, I think that, like, the city trial mode, it's just like a thing. It's like there would be different events or whatever, but you're doing the same thing over and over again. But I think like why Melee catches fire is because it's a party game that you're playing at home with your friends. It's a LAN party game, but it's a fighting game, so there's like some type of competition level to it, right? And I think that like in contrast, but also maybe like a foil, two things that are kind of growing together. What made Kirby Air Ride so beautiful is that like it wasn't some type of game where I felt the need to be like antagonistic with my friends. It was purely like explorative. You know, you're here and you're just enacting in the world. It's kind of like being alive. You know, it's like it's
all right.
very weird.
That's the headline.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's like kind of like I said with the PS3 too, where it's like it kind of feels like that vision of the city. It's like this idyllic thing. Like it's the simplest view of what a metropolitan thing is before like before greed and politics and like the horror of like what we do to these things, right?
Yes.
This is just a city, you know, that you have a car in.
And you're just collecting icons that improve your glide or your speed or your weight. Yeah. I love that. Well, one other thing I want to ask about too, we've gotten some like really fun specific and setting details. Are there other details about you at this time or just your life, like things you would have been doing, like whether it was like, oh, I was playing this sport, or like I was in this general like time in school, like any like vague details that come to mind about that?
You know, I think that we've touched on it a little bit. This is my time where I was having friends over. I was probably moving between elementary school and middle school. Mm-hmm. So this is like maybe the waning years of being like a kid with an imagination kind of thing. Because like middle school, I'm like scared of girls and like I'm like focused on school and things like that. This was like truly like unbridled joy, you know? And like I said, like being on those rocking chairs, and you've uncovered another memory. Being on those rocking chairs and eating Cheeto Puffs out of a big fucking bowl that like my mom would bring me and my buddy Justin Forline, another friend who would play these games with. I love it. And just like being there, there was no time. We were just stuck in space, just having fun, you know? Mm-hmm. And the story that came to mind was Justin was like he's like the one of the weirdest people I think I've ever met. Uh-huh. He's also someone I played World of Warcraft with for a very long time. Oh, nice. We just like went to a lot of school through a lot of our lives together. Dropped off the map out of nowhere, and then suddenly had like emailed us saying he had a child, and it's like the cutest kid in the entire world. Like, Justin had a kid and moved to Bakersfield. Crazy stuff. Bakersfield. But I remember about the same time we'd be eating Cheetos, playing GameCube games, looking up really high up. My parents had a pool, and it was like never heated. It was always really cold. Uh-huh. And I remember I'd be like, Justin, let's go like put our feet in the pool. I remember I'd put my feet in the pool. I'd be like, ooh. And then he put his feet in the pool, and he didn't react. Stoic as all hell. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, I don't have any feeling in my feet. And I was like, what? Like literally Mr. Deeds, Adam Sandler type thing where his foot's all charred to shit. And I didn't find out until like maybe 4 years later that he was lying about that he was like doing a joke.
Yes.
I thought he couldn't feel in his feet for like a long period of time, over 1,000 days.
He got you. Oh my gosh.
He really got me.
And the things I believed as a kid, or still just believe when people tell me, kind of like that. I'll fall for anything. That's so great. John, we've gotten to hear so much great detail and like joy from you about this game, you know, this period of your life, when you experienced it for the most part. Is there any like detail about the game you haven't shared yet that could be a small thing, could be a big thing? No, maybe it's just like the little idle animation of like of Kirby being like on here. I have my AirPods, and Kirby being on the thing. Yes.
On the things. He'd have this like little idle animation where he'd like turn around and he'd like look. He'd be like he'd be doing like little animations like that.
Oh yeah.
Just perfect.
I love when like game characters will do that, like just address the person playing it and be like, what are you doing? Or Mario falling asleep, or that's wonderful. Well, on our way, you know, out of this main event here, before we get into some post-show segments, would you do me a favor and just try to like put a bow on whatever place this game held for you? Yeah.
I think that Kirby Air Ride, it's a game that like I don't think a lot of people like remember very closely. I know it now has a bit of a cult following, but I think it has a cult following because of a reason. I think it was ahead of its time in that it was a sandbox thing. For all these game design reasons, it was ahead of its time. But also I think it happens to capture like the magic of like exploring a place in a way that like games I think are constantly seeking to reimagine or redo. And I think that like if you haven't played it, I'd highly recommend it because it's a fantastic opportunity to reconnect with what is now an over 20-year-old game.
Yeah.
And yet it's doing something that you'll see has had waves and repercussions to how games are played now.
Yes. Well, that's wonderful and so poignant. And John, thank you for bringing on this game to share with us today. It was so fun hearing from you about it.
My pleasure.
Well, before we go, like I said, I got some fun stuff planned for you today.
Let's do it.
The first segment of the two that we'll get into is the Fact Me by Your Game segment. And it's just where I share fun facts with my guest about the game they brought on. This one we sort of dipped into earlier. I have this titled Air Ride Genesis. This comes from, of course, the Wikipedia article that I pulled this from, but also this is from screenshots from Electronic Gaming Monthly back in the day.
Whoa.
And Gamer Europe was a website as well. So this is like the Wayback Machine had some stuff for us. So Kirby Air Ride was known interchangeably as Kirby Bowl 64 or Kirby Ball 64. This is at the early development of it. Kirby Ball, actually, is the Japanese name for Kirby's Dream Course, which is a Super Nintendo title.
Yeah.
And, of course, later became known as Kirby Air Ride. It began development in the early days of the 64, as we said earlier. The one notable thing about this game is that it was one of only 2 playable demos shown at the Nintendo 64's unveiling at the 1995 Shoshinkai show, which must have been a showcase in Japan.
Yeah.
The other game being Super Mario 64. So when they're like showing off, hey, this is the N64, here's some possibly important titles that are coming out.
Yeah.
We had a game that was never released and then Super Mario 64. So for me, it's kind of like, oh, what could have been sort of thing.
But also, I think it's a testament to, so often you hear about games that have been in production for 12 years or something. They come out and they're dog shit, or they never come out, right? It's crazy to think that this thing did come out on a completely different set of hardware.
Yes.
And had the impact it did.
Totally. And I wonder, I would assume it was a completely different game, possibly. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. At this point, during this showcase, the game consisted of 2 sub-games. One was similar to Marble Madness, as players would control a ball-shaped Kirby to either race across an obstacle course or knock competing players off the playing field, similar to Kirby's Dream Course. And the other more closely resembled the final game, which was sort of a snowboarding race, which Kirby collects stars for points. I would also totally play that game. I'd love to see Kirby.
A snowboarding race, I love that.
I want to see him on a snowboard. That's the one fact today. I'll get us into the final segment, the game recommendations. Now, like I sort of told you before the show, John, this segment is my one forced tie-in to the movie Call Me By Your Name, where I'm going to treat...
That's what this is.
Yes. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to treat Kirby Air Ride as your passionate summer fling that you have in Italy. Like the movie, however, the fling is not going to work out. So in order to help you, my friend, get over this heartbreak of losing this very passionate lover, I guess I'll say, I've got 3 recommendations that all have a little something in common with this game to help you get back out in the field. What do you say?
Please.
All right.
I'm devastated.
I love it. Yeah, and we're going to change that one way or another. The first recommendation is if you want another unconventional but sick and absolutely revered racing game, I'll recommend something called Excitebots Trick Racing, which is a Wii racing game. Have you ever heard of this?
Excitebots Trick Racing? No.
It is a little more of a traditional racer where it is almost, I think as far as I can remember, entirely course-based. Like, you're just trying to be the first person to cross that finish line.
Yeah.
But it's very well revered. It's sort of like almost like a niche Wii title that, like a sort of a hidden gem that's very well loved. It's not exactly, I don't think it may have been in the Excite Bike lineage, but by the time you get to this, you're racing like these 4-wheeled monstrosities to get through a course. So your first recommendation is Excitebots Trick Racing.
I'm literally writing these down.
I love it. Which will be great, especially when I do the joke one at the end. Perfect. The second one is if you like controlling Kirby in this way was exciting for you because it was unconventional and you want to see what else he's capable of. And this is convenient because I know you, my friend, are a fan of golf. If you want to hit the links with Kirby, I'll recommend a game I was just referencing in the last segment, Kirby's Dream Course. Do you know this game?
I think I've seen some gameplay of it.
Yes.
I don't think I've ever actually played it.
It is available on Nintendo Switch Online if you happen to have...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't even think... I think it's a part of the initial package, not even the expansion, but this is I think you will actually love this as a fan of golf and a fan of Kirby, because you're essentially... Kirby's your golf ball and you're trying to get him into a hole. And it's wild. Like, I will say, every time I revisit this, which is like once a year, I'll play it one night for like an hour and then forget about it. I always forget how it controls. So I'm like, I always think the game stinks and then I remember how it works. And I'm like, oh no, it's actually kind of brilliant. It's like an isometric top-down view. Essentially just, it's kind of like putt-putt, but with a lot of wrinkles. So that's Kirby's Dream Course. And lastly,
fantastic.
This is not a fair thing what I'm about to say. But the first time I ever saw this game, I was disoriented. I was like, I don't know what's happening. I am so confused. I think this is a racing game, but I'm not really seeing any racing going on. So if, for you, being disoriented brings you joy, then I'm going to recommend another game that was very disorienting to players when it came out, both in a bait and switch sense and also in sort of a narrative sense at some point, and that's Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. Are you familiar with this Metal Gear title?
I believe I have attempted to play Metal Gear Sons of Liberty.
Yes. So my tie here, and I'm gonna show my work like I'm doing a math problem.
Please, I'm excited.
Is that it's this isn't? I don't feel like this is a spoiler because the game's been out since 2001, but going into this game, people are excited to play as Solid Snake for another Metal Gear Solid title. After about 2 hours of gameplay, you never play as Snake again. You're actually playing as this guy Raiden that upset countless players back in the day. So that was disorienting. And also there's sort of like a meta-narrative that is revealed truly like 4/5 of the way into the game. I don't actually want to spoil this part, but let's just...
Don't spoil that part.
Let's just say there's a reveal that... Because it's honestly an amazing game. There's a reveal that is so disorienting that I still don't really fully understand it, but or like know if I buy it, but I still loved it. So anyway, your three
That's a hell of a recommendation. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll list those three off again just to recap. We have Excitebots Trick Racing, Kirby's Dream Course, and Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. John, that'll bring us to the end of the Rex, and that will actually bring us to the conclusion of our show today. So before we go and plug whatever we want on our way out, dude, thanks again for taking the time tonight. This was so much fun chatting with you. I look forward to, the year 2029 when we get to do it again.
Yeah, definitely. Same here. I had an absolute blast. Thank you.
Oh, you betcha. I know we talked about a couple games that you've been working on that you're excited about, whether it's a website for those games or social media where we can find them. What do you want to plug on your way out?
Yeah. I'll plug two things. One is if you want to play any of the games that me and my co-collaborator Ian have made. Just to be clear, I'm ideas guy. I know that it's a terrible thing. That's why we led with game producer.
Oh, buddy, that's me too. I'm no programmer.
Ian does all of the good actual hard work, but that's actually another thing that it's worth mentioning. Ian and I, when we first started talking about making games, connected over our love of Kirby Air Ride. It is a really fertilizing place.
We have come full circle.
Exactly. So if you want to play Stickball, which is a brief 10-minute narrative game about my grandfather dying, but also about playing games in the streets of Brooklyn, you can check that out in our... what is it? Our itch, which I'll include below.
Yes.
Also, be looking out for in the somewhat near future. Me and Ian are working on Guy Sword Budget Cuts. It'll be a mobile game that will be available on iOS and Android. Finally, because I'm here, I have a Substack where I write stuff. And like it's a wide variety of things. My most recent thing is like a little fable about Microsoft laying off a lot of my coworkers.
Yeah.
So if you want to go get really upset and read about that, that'll also be included below.
I did read that too. You put it on your story. I clicked the link and I freaking read the thing. It's great.
Whoa. Thank you.
You betcha.
That's cool.
You posted two things I really liked recently on your story. That and that picture around Angela's birthday of you two when I can only assume you're like 11 or something. And it was just that really...
Probably when I'm playing Kirby Air Ride. No, that was that Italy trip where I fell in love with Fiats. Yes.
Okay. Well, the public can't see that now because it's a story. It disappeared, but I loved it. John, like I said, I'll put links to anything you just plugged in our show notes below, and then that also includes everything that I'm about to plug right now. Woo! The cover art for Call Me By Your Game is done by the artist Glenn J. You can find him and his other great work on Instagram at Glenn with 2 N's.J. A.Y. The show is produced, edited, and the original music that you hear throughout is done by the great Jeremy Schmidt. If you want to thank him for the work he puts into this podcast, check out his show, Video Games, a comedy show. It's also a part of the same exact podcast network. You can follow myself all over social media, including on Twitch if you want to watch me stream games. I'm so streaky though. I'll stream for 3 months straight, then I won't stream at all. So I don't know what I'm going to stream next. I haven't done it since I played Psychonauts 2 last month. But if you want to follow me, I'll be there occasionally. You can follow the show Call Me By Your Game all over social media as well, on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, and even on TikTok and our YouTube channel. Definitely give that. If you're just an audio listener, go check out our page. Give us a follow. See how handsome both of us were on this episode. You're going to love it. You can also follow our podcast network, Super NPC Radio, also all over social media. And lastly, if you're still listening to this and you like hearing me talk to people about video games, then you're going to love what we have over on patreon.com/super NPC Radio. It's a place where if you want to support us at any tier, you get bonus podcasts. Of course, almost everything's about video games over there. That includes our collection of past shows, a retired podcast we used to do, Super NPCs, which was just a weekly topical show hosted by me and Jeremy. We did 180 episodes that retired at the end of last year. So even if you subscribe at the $1 tier, which is basically a tip jar, you get 180 free episodes. We have a games club going on right now where the viewers can see it, but we're playing Death Stranding right now, a psychotic game to cover in a games club series. Have you played that title before, John?
I've been in and out of Death Stranding for the last 5 years. I think it's a beautiful game to both go in, get really scared,
yes,
and leave.
Absolutely,
yeah.
I had never played it before. Another Kojima game. Speaking of Metal Gear Solid 2, and I'm so glad I'm being forced to play it because I probably wouldn't have happened otherwise. But yeah, we got a games club that releases every Friday for DJ Toads, and I do a bonus version of this podcast every month too, the co-op series, where we just did an episode on Psychonauts 2, and we're also doing an episode in October on Uncharted 2. We've got a theme of sequels this year, and next year we're doing, I think I've announced this, we're doing indie titles. Up to my discretion, I might cheat somewhere. I've made this conclusion to the episode very long, but that'll do it for the plugs. And this episode of Call Me By Your Game, we will see you on the next one.